This is Face the Nation, broadcasting live from the CNN IBN headquarters in New Delhi with Sagarika Ghosh.
Hi there. Yes, tomorrow a Norway court will deliver its judgment on the Indian couple accused of beating and burning their 7-year-old son. The Oslo police say the parents, Chandrasekhar and his wife Anupama, burnt their son with a metal spoon which left him with a scarred leg and hit him with a belt. The physical abuse reportedly continued over 5 years. The couple are in custody at the moment in Norway. We're asking the question if Indian parents are sometimes unaware of modern norms of parenting, or is the method of parenting specific to a certain culture? Let's first listen to Kurt Lear of the Oslo police, which is prosecuting the case.
The charges is that during the period from 2007 to 9 March 2012, in a place in Oslo, she burnt her son with a hot spoon or other metal objects on his left leg, causing scarring, and hit him on several occasions with a belt and by other means. These kind of disciplinary actions are not allowed in Norway. If you commit a crime in Norway, you get charged first, and it doesn't help that you don't know that it's illegal. You may face a jail time, but of course, if you just hold the child in the arm, it may be illegal, but you don't necessarily get prosecuted for it. But hitting the child will most certainly put you in jail.
If you are a parent living in Norway and you hit and burn your child, you're committing a crime and you will be put in jail. That's what the Oslo police there is saying, and he's saying that's what the parents did in this particular case. Now, we wanted to join this debate here on Face the Nation. Tweet me or log on to ibnlive.com to post an opinion. You can tweet me on Sagarika Ghosh or on Face the Nation on Twitter. We're asking, should there be universal parenting norms irrespective of culture? Joining us tonight, Shireen Vakil Miller, Director of Advocacy Save the Children, Suranya Iyer, lawyer, Manali Singhal Bhandare, also lawyer. Suranya Iyer, let's kick it off with you. You have been following and taking up and campaigning for the Bhattacharya children, who in 2011 were also similarly separated from their parents. The Norway authorities accusing Sagarika and Anurup Bhattacharya of child abuse. Now, in this particular case, you see the Oslo police saying that the parents have burnt the child. They beat the child with a belt for 5 years. These are crimes in Norway. Why should they not face the Norwegian law?
Yeah, Sagarika, there was no allegation of abuse in the Bhattacharya case, but let's leave that aside. You know, I mean, listen, burning your child, I mean, is a crime anywhere. Let's not make it sound as if it's a parenting norm in India to malevolently burn your child. If a crime has been committed against the person of a child, then obviously it has to be prosecuted. But what I would like to say about this case is that, you know, let the allegation and even a negative court verdict not decided finally in the minds of anybody who's interested in looking at this. I think it is still relevant and important to ask, was there proper application of mind by the judicial process on this case, or was there a rubber stamping of the prosecution case? What is the credibility of the evidence that was presented over what they say is behavior that's since 2007? I'm not even sure if the little boy was there with his family during, you know, that entire time. Were the parents allowed to present their own expert evidence on any burn marks that were there? I believe that the grandparents have said that there were some old, you know, burns that the child had suffered in an accidental injury.
Right.
And also, you know, what's very important, another point point is that what is the allegation that both the parents did this to the child, or is it only that the father did it? Because, you know, I mean, look at their behavior. Everyone knows that if you're being tried for burning your child, then, you know, you're going to get into big trouble if you've done it, right? This, the father, even though the child was taken into state care for 6 weeks, goes back to Norway, and then when he receives the notice, the mother who was in India voluntarily follows in Norway as well. You know, this is not suspicious behavior of parents who might have burnt their child.
Right, so if they knew they had committed a crime, why would they go back to Norway? Let me put that point to Shireen Vakil Miller.
Ask that question. Just okay.
Shireen, just respond to what Suranya is saying. You know, parenting norms sometimes are culture specific. Disciplining a child sometimes is culture specific. The occasional slap or the occasional hit is not unknown in an Indian family. If the parent was willfully burning the child and aware that this was a crime, would they go back to Norway and risk the wrath of the authorities? Surely, once again, perhaps cultural sensibilities and cultural norms are being misunderstood by the Norway authorities as child abuse.
I mean, I don't think that, you know, this is about cultural norms. I think that, as the person just before me said, it's not that in India this is acceptable. In fact, it may not come to light and it may not be acted on, but burning and beating a child is an offense. Even in India, under the Juvenile Justice Act, you can be penalized. The thing is, it hardly ever comes to light, especially when it is in the home or with parents. And very little action is taken. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of this case, so I can't really comment on it, but the fact is here you can get away with it, which you shouldn't. We do have laws. They may not be enforced. But in Norway, it's very clear that action will
Those
be
are the
taken.
laws, and you have to abide by the laws. In fact, perhaps
Absolutely.
Indian parents need to be aware. Let me just bring in actor and politician Khushbu, because this case is generating a huge amount of debate. She spoke to us saying Indian parents ought to understand that parenting norms prevalent in the country where they live should be followed.
I think in India we feel that we take a little more extra effort in bringing up the child in a perfect manner. So I don't know how far these guideline values are going to comfort the Indian parents or how far it's going to enrage the Indian parents. But for me, I would say that I think I don't have to need to follow the guideline values. I know how to bring up my child. But the parents, yes, they do need to understand that there are guideline values which is there, not in India, but abroad, which they follow very strictly. And if you decide to live abroad, then you have to be a Roman in Rome. You don't have a choice.
You have to be a Roman in Rome. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Let's bring you some Twitter reactions as well, because we want this show to be interactive. We want you to tweet in and give us your reaction, to talk to us on this issue. Akshay Nijgal is writing, Indian parents residing abroad ought to educate themselves about local laws. They can't force the government to help. Sonali Dalal is saying, how can a state dictate parent-child relationship, particularly of a culture they don't understand? Manali Bhandaria, from your point of view as a child rights lawyer, is it basically the law that is the most important issue here? It's not about culture, it's not about sensibility, it's not about family values. The fact is, the law says in Norway, you hit your child, you go to jail. And that is a law that Indian parents living in Norway need to be aware of. And perhaps that's a law we should have in India. Or do you feel that that is out of sync with our mores and our norms and how we bring up our children?
No, I think the law is sacrosanct in any country. And I think these parents should have seen, because there was an example just very recently for them to really mend their ways. And if assuming what the allegations, if they are true, I think they sound horrendous. To burn your child or beat your child blue is something which is not acceptable anywhere. So,
but Manali, as Suranya is saying,
yes.
But as Suranya is saying that we are not aware actually whether those burns were inflicted by the parents, whether they were inflicted as burns.
Yes, I would like to give, in fact, I would like to give the benefit of doubt to the parents, and I would hope that the Norwegian authorities will do a proper and fair investigation in the matter. But having said this, your question to me was, do you think that the norms, the laws are sacrosanct? I think yes, for the simple reason that people must also understand that if they are in a country, for example, take Singapore. People go to Singapore, anybody even who goes as a tourist, he knows that even if he, spits a chewing gum on the road, he may be fined or, he may get something. And people don't do that. So how can you go and you're going on a work permit or whatever visa and you're living in a country? I don't think this is something that should be even allowed or accepted in India.
Right. So the law is sacrosanct in this case. Suranya Iyer, you were making the point about the fact that the burn injuries need not have been inflicted by the parents as burn injuries. They could have been old injuries. The fact that they're hitting with a belt, again, not necessarily perhaps considered by the parents as a criminal act. Do you believe that on the part of the Norwegian authorities, there is a tendency to believe the worst of Indian parents, that the Indian parent is abusive, that the Indian parent is inflicting cruelty, that the Indian parent is in fact doing the wrong thing? In fact, for the Indian parent, these are small incidents being blown out of proportion?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely, from what I'm hearing, there is a perception, that it's not just about India. That generally in the developing world and in third world countries, parents are very harsh and disciplinarian and very easily use, physical interference with the child as a means of communicating whatever they want to them. And what I find very interesting and troublesome about this is the way in which words like beating and violent discipline are being used. I had pointed this out earlier, but for instance, in a UNICEF study in 2010, which was done only on violent discipline in low and middle income countries, the fact that they exclude high income countries displays, according to me, an inherent bias. They defined violent discipline as including shouting at a child and calling their names such as lazy. Okay, in Scandinavia, calling a child lazy is a crime under the very same laws under which this couple has been tried.
Right.
Any punishment that causes physical discomfort is considered violent discipline. So, it's easy to say that you have to abide by laws in Rome, but could Manali Bhandari or Shireen Miller have imagined that calling your child lazy could be a crime? I mean,
it's the slippery slope.
Even beyond
it's the slippery slope.
There is something really wonky. There's something really wonky going on with the way in which parenting is being looked at.
Right. Shireen Miller, I'll come to you for a response. I'll come to you for a response. Let's also bring in...
Sagarika...
Yes, very quickly, Suranya.
Just one thing. Yeah, while they say that calling a child lazy and all is violent, interestingly, they don't include Western practices like sleep training, where a child as young as 3 weeks old, an infant, is locked up in its cot to cry alone, to learn to sleep alone. Babies can cry up to 3 hours like that. I mean, and also there's a huge stress, in the West.
So it comes down to definitions.
Teaching the child to play independently.
It's coming down to definitions. So, what we understand as violent, what the West doesn't understand as violence, what we understand as cruelty.
What Indian parents might consider really harsh and cruel and not giving a baby what it wants, which is a whole lot of love and affection, and forcing it to fit an adult schedule, that's not called abuse or violence or emotional distress. But things like slapping your kid, I mean, what do you mean by beating?
But Suranya, the point that the Norwegian authorities make, the point that the Norwegian authorities make is that they have the right to secure a child in the way they feel fit. And if you're living in Norway, then you have to submit to Norwegian methods of parenting your child. That's what they say, that we are looking after the well-being of the child. But let me just, I'll come to you for a reaction to that. Let's listen to Dr. Kersi Chavda. He's a psychiatrist at the Hinduja hospital. He spoke to us on this issue. Let's have a listen to him.
Sometimes parents come and tell me things like, we were brought up like this, I was beaten by my dad, and see what happened, nothing happened to me. Well, maybe it was a method that was used in the past, but today we are aware of the fact, and research has collaborated, that physical punishment, using threats and things like that really play no role in good parenting techniques.
Physical violence plays no role in good parenting techniques. So if you believe that, well, in India, it's okay to smack and slap our kids around, well, that is not modern parenting, says the doc. Durden 101 says that the problem is with Norway. Nanny government thinks it's their business to take care of every child in their country. Mahadev Sai says our parents from West, aware of our culture, need to come out of mental slavery. Let's put that to Shireen Vakil Miller. Mental slavery, our culture, our norms. Now, as Suranya is saying, there may be a lot of issues with the way the West brings up its kids, or the West believes parenting is to be done, which are, to us, violent and cruel.
No, Sagvi, I'm actually quite amazed at this. You know, what are we saying? That it is culturally fine, that we think it's okay to beat and burn children? I don't think that, I hope that we don't think that it's okay
no,
to beat
Shireen,
and
you've
burn
made that point.
children.
I want to push you to, I want to push you to racial stereotypes. I want to push you to racial and cultural stereotypes. That is there a racial and cultural stereotype that Indians are held in the West?
Absolutely not. In Norway, any child, whether they're I think a Norwegian mother or father, would be subject to the same, you know, arrest, punishment, etc. Obviously, they might have been more aware. But in any country in the world, in any place, beating and burning a child is not appropriate for a child and will cause damage and should not be allowed. But now the question is,
but
whether
those are
tell you, in a child abuse study that was conducted by our own Ministry of Women and Child, along with UNICEF and Save the Children and a local organization, in 2007, it was found that 60% of children reported physical abuse, about 50% reported emotional abuse. Much of this was done at home and in parents. The truth is, you see probably as a reporter, you know, week after week stories that come out in extreme situations where children, there was a girl in Rajasthan in a school who suffered corporal punishment for not covering her books and finally died. But what has happened with that girl?
The rising violence against children in India is also a reality. In fact, I do have some shocking statistics. NCPCR, 1,059 complaints related to sexual and physical abuse of children received in 2007 to 11. But Suranya, go ahead. You wanted to come in there.
Yeah, I mean, you know, all this sanctimonious talk about firstly burning and beating are two separate things. And I'm willing to stand here and say on national TV that you can't throw parents in jail because they've slapped their kid. All right? You can't take one incident and bomb a family for it. There's a relationship, a context. I think that when you're dealing with child welfare, you have to take into account the paradox that very young children adore their parents, regardless of whether they're a harsh parent or a strict parent or they've been slapped a couple of times. And secondly, you know, this idea that that the parent is just a parent as opposed to a person. Are parents not allowed? I mean, parents can get angry and frustrated. They can, you know, shout. The same behavior in the child can invite an impatient and angry response or just a laugh at a different time. You know, you know, I find this really scary as a woman as well, because it's almost as if, since mothers are the primary caregiver typically, even in the West, the mother keeps getting blamed for expressing her personality to her child. You know, and it's, you know, they want us to become these plastic dolls who never have any response to the child. You can't, okay, you know, we can have a talk about whether slapping a child is an effective way of communicating what you want them to do. And that's a perfectly reasonable discussion to have. But criminalizing this kind of thing is
that's a very good point.
And the worst
that's a very good point. These are
and you know, this awful study that Save the Children and UNICEF have done with the NCPCR, let me tell you the result of that, all right?
Okay, Suranya, we're going to have to go into break. Suranya, we're going to have to go into break. I'll come back and pick it up right there where we left up. But you're making the valuable point that when a parent slaps a child, he or she does it within the context of family values and family norms. Is that necessarily a criminal act? On the other hand, do Indian parents need to realize that slapping in certain countries is a criminal act, and slapping is certainly not a norm, perhaps a modern parenthood? Lots more up on the show. Let's take a short break. Keep tweeting us with the hashtag Norway. Write into us or on IBNLive.com. We'll take your tweets or opinions in the show in a little while. You're with Face the Nation. We are raising the question, the Norway child row, should there be universal parenting norms, is what we are asking. The tweets are coming in thick and fast. There's one lady who has written in, what does it matter about a smack and a slap? It never did Indian children any harm. The other tweet I have here is saying that, in fact, India should have the same laws as Norway because we need to have the same tough laws when it comes to parenting. Let's bring you our next speak out. Manoj Sengupta says, he's a child rights activist from Bangalore, and he has suggested a solution for the problem. Let's listen in to him.
I do not endorse the way the parents have tried to correct the child. But that's my perception or my method as against their method. So who is right, who is wrong? My submission would be that if the country or the community feels it is an incorrect method that they have taken, the resolution does not lie in separating the parent from the child and putting the child in a foster care and the parent in jail. I think the resolution lies in keeping them together under a certain mentoring program for about 6 months or 8 months or 3 months, I don't know, whatever the time may be, and helping them to understand why another method is a better solution, a better way to bring up your child.
Okay, that's a very interesting solution there. Don't put the parent in jail. He's not necessarily a criminal, but simply educate him on perhaps the way he can bring up children differently. This relates to what you were saying, Suranya, but I interrupted you in the last segment. Carry on with your point and then we'll get a reaction in from Shireen and Manali.
Yeah, so based on this 2007 report, the NCPCR has done a report on corporal punishment in schools, okay, where they've adopted Save the Children India and UNICEF's extreme ideas of what is violent discipline while ignoring sleep training and other Western practices, cruel Western practices, okay, and this is what the report says, that corporal punishment includes mental harassment like sarcasm, okay, and physical punishment includes detention in a room. Now, I mean, it's absurd. And this report is supposed to be for corporal punishment in schools. But it goes on to say that under Section 23 of the Juvenile Justice Act, parents can also be prosecuted for corporal punishment as defined by them. Okay, and 2 years later, after being lobbied by the NCPCR and Save the Children, the Ministry for Women and Child Development has proposed an amendment to the JJ Act that would elevate emotional distress caused to a child, including by a parent, to the level of grievous hurt under the IPC, which carries a jail term of 3 years. I would like to ask all these bodies, the Ministry for Women and Child, NCPCR and Save the Children, have you ever walked into a Jhuggi Jhopri colony? Have you seen what happens in the family?
They're unrealistic.
Are you going to deprive these people even of their children? They have nothing else going for them.
Suranya, we're going to have to get Shireen in.
Sanctimonious approach.
Right. Shireen, do you want to respond to that?
I mean, there's no question that the most important thing is for children to be with their families, and only in extreme circumstances, and that too for a very short time, if there is actually a threat to children, should children be separated from their families, especially in India, where we do have the advantage of having a joint family system, of having larger families. You can find alternatives, and definitely the issue really, because it is actually, do not want to separate a parent from a child.
But as a last resort, you do have to. You do have to separate.
And very important. Absolutely.
And parents have to be aware of the norms. Unfortunately, we're up against time.
But parents must be aware of the impact. Many times parents don't
Parents are simply unaware. Manali Bhandare, what is coming out here is that Suranya is saying that the laws on the child bodies are far too sanctimonious, they're unrealistic, they're simply interfering in family life. Shireen Miller saying parents have to be aware of norms. Where do you stand? You believe there has to be introspection, rethink on the part of the child bodies as well as parents?
I think, yes, I agree with you completely for the simple reason that I agree with Suranya's example that what happens in Jhuggi Jhopris or anywhere, you know, you can't control it and you can't start putting all parents in jail or separating all the children. But remember one thing, these parents also have to understand if someone else beats their children, they will go and make a police complaint.
That's a very valuable point.
Somebody else beats,
and I think what's coming out... And I think what's coming out of what you're saying is that a child is not just a child, he is a future citizen. He is a future participant in society. So the way he is brought up actually does have a bearing on what kind of citizen he will be. But on the other hand, Suranya Iyer making the point that cultural norms and family values cannot be sacrificed at the altar of political correctness and the diktat of child bodies. Shireen Miller making the point about awareness. Thanks very much indeed, Suranya Iyer, Shireen Miller, Manali Bhandare. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to leave you now with our think about it. Are you, as a parent, following modern norms of parenting, and are you aware of the UN Convention on Child Rights? As Indians, we are proud of our family values. Maybe it is also time to introspect on what kind of parents we really are. What is our final poll saying? Can there be universal norms on parenthood? What have you been telling us? 58 are saying yes. Thanks for watching Face the Nation.